Hey everybody, and welcome to my January TBR. So the month of January has been going on for about a week at this point in time, so a little bit late I guess, because probably, I don't know when this one will get edited and will be out for you guys, but I still wanted to give you guys an insight into my January reading. Now, we are the 7th of January. I have not yet read a single book from my actual TBR, so good start I guess to the new year, but let's go. I think the common theme for this TBR is going to be, I don't actually know too much about this book anymore at this point in time. So let's start off. I'm going to be doing a readathon this month, which is a readathon hosted by Kate from Mommy to a Rockstar over on her Discord. And of course, all my cats have to start eating now, so that you have the background noise of cat food probably. But so the readathon that I will be taking part in is 5 Nights at Freddy's, which is a readathon, as I indicated, hosted by Mommy to a Rockstar, so Kate, over on her Discord, and it is a sort of horror-based readathon, though I won't be reading too much horror for it neither. But so there are different paths that you can take and stuff like that. I'm going to just be following a single path, because you can also cross over, but I'm going to be following the blue path. For my first book, I need to choose a book that I will be reading in bed. Now I already have confirmation that you don't need to solely read reading it in bed, so I will be choosing A Mage of No Renown by Cal Kate. This is in principle, I would say this is in principle I thought it was just like a prequel to King's Dark Tidings, and that it was just like King's Dark Tidings book 0.5, and potentially it is also that, but apparently it is also just the start of a new series, a prequel series to King's Dark Tidings. I started it last night. It is a story in which we're following Wesson, who is a character who we meet along the way in King's Dark Tidings, and so in King's Dark Tidings, we basically don't get a whole ton of information about his background, and that will be sorted, I guess, with this prequel series. I don't know how I feel about a series in which I have to miss out on Reskin, but we'll see as I get further into the book how I feel about it. Next up, for the blue path, I have to read a book with Bunny on the cover, or in the book. For this one, I'm going to be reading Authority by Jeff Vandermeer, the second book in his what is it called? Southern Reach trilogy. So I read Annihilation, I think somewhere last year, or maybe even the year before that already, but I was quite familiar with the story from the movie already. But so basically in this book we have a series of scientists who go on an expedition into Area X, which is this sort of like secluded area. The government has sealed it off because basically when people go in there, if they come back completely disoriented, losing all of their memory of what happened in there. And so they want to get answers about what this area is, whether it's safe, what is going on. And so in the first book we follow an expedition into this area and the weird stuff that's taking place there. So the second one, originally I thought it like had nothing to do with it based on like the description, but one chapter and I can definitely confirm that it definitely has a clear link with book number 1. We're just following the story from a different perspective at this point in time. So far I'm enjoying it, but yeah, I'm also not that far into that one neither. Third prompt is to read a horror or a thriller. This is classified as horror in Goodreads, and so I'm going to assume that that means that they are correct, and that it is Las Indignas by Agustina Bastarrica. So this is the Spanish version. This novel is not yet translated. This is the newest novel by Agustina Bastarrica, who you may know from Tender is a Flesh, which was very, very popular on BookTube like 2 years ago or so. So this is her new novel. I have not looked into the synopsis of this one. I am very eager to read it, but I'm reading it in Spanish, so it's going to be a little bit slower, so I actually should probably start it today already. The good thing about this format of books for the Spanish editions is that the font is like super big in them, so you do get through it rather quickly. So this is like under 200 pages long as well, so hopefully that will mean that I still get through it at a decent pace, and that it doesn't discourage me from my Spanish exam, which I have in 2 weeks. Next up, we need to read a book with orange on the cover, which came out really lucky because for the month of January I was going to put this book on my TBR to start off with, and this is a massive book, so I'm happy that I can combine it into this readathon. And that is The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. This is or Islington, I always say Islington because of the city in the UK, I think it's pronounced like that, but I think it's Islington. But so this is a fantasy novel. This is the first in a trilogy. I have read the first two, but you're supposed to read these ones shortly together. I read them like a year apart almost, and it definitely showed. When I was reading book 2, even though I knew like the plot of book 1, there was a lot about the world building that confused me about book 2, and so I want to go back into book 1, back through book 2, and hopefully feel confident enough to go into book 3. But so in this one we're following a trio of friends who are at basically sort of magical academy. They are about to basically have their big test to figure out whether they can continue their studies or whether their magic needs to be blocked. In this world there has been some conflict between magical people and non-magical people, and so magic is bound to restrictions, meaning that magical people, for example, cannot harm non-magical people, and they literally physically cannot do it. Their magic is blocked in a way that even if they were to think about it, you know, they wouldn't be able to act upon those thoughts. And there's now, as I indicated, our friends are at the point of taking this big test, but one of these friends has been having some difficulties with his magic and is therefore fearing that he might not succeed. I really enjoy The Shadow of What Was Lost, and I'm very much eager to reread it now and hopefully love the sequels as much as I loved this first one the first time around. And then the final book for this readathon, so my 5th book, is a book involving nightmares or a dark cover. For that one I decided to go with Spin. I've forgotten the author at this point in time. Basically this book is also the book that I chose for the... Now I have to think of the correct title. I think it is TBR Spin, because there's also a BookTube Spin that exists. So basically in this TBR Spin, I will have the creators linked because I think Freshly Read Books is one of them, and I've forgotten the second, but I followed them only recently, so I'm not really as familiar with their handles yet. But so in this one you basically start off the year making a list of 12 books, and then every month they will do a spin, and based on the prompts you try to fit one of those 12 books on there, and then if you cannot fit one of those 12 books on there, you have to swap one of your remaining books for another one, and just trying to get through the year without having to swap, I guess, or just like that way getting through some books randomly. The prompt for January was to read a book with a Canadian author, and the author of Spin is American Canadian. So, and this, I only know that it's sci-fi. I know that I added it to my want to read list because of a recommendation from Emily Fox on the channel's Books with Emily, and I don't really remember whether this was in a general introduction to sci-fi video or whether this was specifically in her video in which she recommends First Contact with Aliens books. So it's definitely sci-fi. Whether it's First Contact, I'm not entirely sure of, and I didn't want to read the synopsis over again now because I'm going to be reading it somewhere within this month, and I don't like to read synopses that close to reading the book because a lot of times they kind of contain spoilers in them, and so I'm going to go in without like any expectation. So that's for the readathon. Aside from the readathon, I do have some other books on this TBR, and let's see whether we're actually able to complete that. First up, I want to mention a book that I'm a third of the way into, and I would just be very happy if I can finally finish it this month, and that is Kushiel's Justice by Jacqueline Carey. I'm a co-host for a read-along for it that is hosted by Sada from Voice True Words, and I fell off of the wagon somewhere in like September, October, I think. I think this was a September, October book, and so I fell off the wagon around there. So I started this one in October, but I just didn't prioritize it during that month, and I will definitely blame the Booker Prize for that. But then the rest of the year, it also just like fell by the wayside, and like occasionally I will read a chapter from it, but I really need to make a more dedicated effort to just like continuously keep on reading it so that I can finish it this month, hopefully. Then we have a new release, The Tusks of Extinction. I didn't write down any authors for these books, so I'll have to have the cover on the screen for you guys to see. This is a novella. As far as I'm aware, it's a sci-fi book in which basically mammoths have been cloned, and so mammoths once again roam the earth, let's say, but mammoths, these cloned mammoths, don't really have behavioral patterns of mammoths down anymore, because, you know, behavior is thought at least to be because, you know, behavior is taught by being in a social group, and because all of these mammoths have not had the example of their parents, for example, they don't really know what it is to be a mammoth. So it's basically a story about scientists teaching mammoths to be mammoths, or that's my interpretation in any case, and that just sounded perfect, so I want to read that one. Then I also have an ARC that's coming out, I think in February or in March. I've seen conflicting information about that, and that is Red Side by Meredith Mooring, I believe her name is, and this is a science fiction fantasy, I believe, featuring a blind protagonist. I've forgotten everything else about it. That's all I needed to know. A fantasy with a blind protagonist. I'm there for it. So that one is definitely one that I want to finish in January. The book that I originally wanted to start the year with, which definitely hasn't been happening, is Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wong. So this is a fantasy book. M.L. Wong is the author of The Sword of Kaigen, which was one of my favorite books of all time, one of my favorite fantasies of all time. And this is a new book by her, so I absolutely wanted to give it a try. I have forgotten what it is about. I do think it's taking place more in a sort of academic setting than The Sword of Kaigen did. And there's intrigue and mysteries and stuff like that going on. I wanted to start off my year with it, but we have not done so we'll see. But this apparently also has a ginormous font, which also will help with just the intimidation factor, you know. Always feels better to go into a book when you know, like, okay, pages will go quickly because the font is humongous. Then the oldest book on my TBR at this point in time is The Family Chow by Lan Samantha Chang. I need to finish this before the 1st of April, but I have a few books that need to be finished in April, so I want to get a head start on this. This is a family saga, as far as I'm aware, of a Chinese-American family living in Wisconsin, and they own a family business, but I think that a body has been found in their freezer, or is being stored in their freezer, something like that. I want to give this one a go. And then the final physical book that I have here, which I'm really not sure anymore that it's going to happen in January, is The Will of the Memmy by James Islington as well. I am already reading a James Islington. Maybe I need to wait with this one until like April, when I have finished my Licanius reads, so that, you know, I'm not overly putting big fantasy on my TBRs all the time, but we'll see. I want to find a spot for it if it doesn't happen in January. I'm not necessarily going to force myself to wait until April, because I do really want to read this one. This is the first in a new series, The Hierarchy. I have heard it being referred to as like Roman inspired. You also have those columns here on the cover that give that same indication. This is, I believe, a story of a boy who goes into this academy because his brother has basically gone missing from there, and so he wants to go on the inside and figure out what happened to his brother, as far as I'm aware. And then the final book that is like potentially on this TBR, but there's so much already on this TBR that I still need to start most of them. So the final one is Yumi and the Nightmare Eater by Brandon Sanderson, the third book in the Secret Project for 2023. I fell completely off of the bandwagon with that, but I still have 3 Brandon Sandersons at this point in time on my TBR, and that's just too much Brandon Sanderson, statistically speaking, because 3 out of 24, that's like 1/8, right? So yeah, 1/8 of my TBR is Brandon Sanderson at this point in time. No, get those stats down. So that would be great if I can get to one of these at least already this month. But so yeah, that's my TBR. Definitely let me know, because I'm definitely not going to be able to finish all of these. Let me know which one, according to you, I should be prioritizing. But so yeah, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!